while we're getting set up, could I just thank Scott Shirley and your team for choosing Harrisburg? You have a great idea, fueled with passion and a love for a parent, and we want to be as supportive as possible to see you grow. And I loved how you said, I'm from DC, and when I'm in DC, I'm a nobody, but I came here to Harrisburg to change things, and I feel like you have that same desire to be a part of something that's growing, something exciting, instead of being a little fish in a big pond in DC or New York City. So thank you, guys, and we want to be supportive, and I know the mayor feels the exact same way.
I do, and I believe in the ripple effects. So I think by drawing attention to what you're doing here and what some other tech firms are doing in the city, it's only going to build on itself, and I think you've reinforced that here today. So.
Yeah, I agree. We can't all thank you enough for because you had this vision and you're setting this up, and you've also already created a business with 11 jobs in downtown Harrisburg, and that's good on so many fronts. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks.
You're setting a great example. Well, good. All right, questions for any of us?
Governor, how do you see the state budget, to use the term over your term, stalemate, proceeding from here? Your speech is just days away for the 16-17 budget. Mm-hmm. Do you see us firming up a 15-16 budget before?
Well, we're talking about that, and I'm talking to the people on the other side of the aisle. Let me just remind you, we actually did have a budget. We agreed on a budget, and it was a bipartisan agreement that passed the Senate. The general appropriations part actually passed the House, didn't it, Representative Kim? And the plug was pulled by the Speaker just before the final vote. That was a foregone conclusion. So we had a budget. So I think I'm working with the folks, the leaders on the other side, and our own side, to figure out what's next. I think this is uncharted territory for everyone. When you have a budget that actually passes and that doesn't get across the finish line, I think the people of Pennsylvania need to ask some hard questions as to why that happened and who's responsible for it.
Are you concerned about funding for the corrections department for the last half of the year, given the blue line?
Yeah, I'm not, because corrections like the state police and others go directly to the safety and security of Pennsylvanians, and my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, my understanding is that is protected, that the piecemeal is actually unnecessary. But piecemeal budgeting is not the way to go. We have a budget. We had one that we agreed to. We need to bring it across the finish line, and that's what the people need. They don't need piecemeal, one at a time fixes. Let's do the whole thing. And by the way, I think the correction legislation was actually less than was in the compromise budget. So I'm not sure what the point that they're trying to make is.
There's talk among the Republican leaders, at least in the House, about just sort of melding the 15-16 budget into 16-17. Is that something that
I guess if you get to June 30th without a budget, you pretty much have done that. We need a budget. We need a 15-16 budget. And I'm still working under the assumption that we ought to bring that across the finish line.
Governor Wolf, are you okay with the idea of just delivering a budget and letting liquor, pensions, property tax reform, other ancillary issues wait until the 16-17 debate?
We had a deal that had historic pension reform, it had historic investment in education, had historic liquor reform. It didn't have a shale tax. It didn't have property tax relief, both of which were in my original budget proposal, and I will bring back. I support both of those things. But what was in the other thing that was in the compromise budget as well as my original budget was that it balanced. The mathematics added up. Now, the independent fiscal office just yesterday came out and said, we have a deficit this year. Yeah, we can argue over how many dollars there are. They're slightly less than our calculation, but okay, we'll give them theirs. It's a big number, and it's an even bigger number. It's a huge number, in fact, in 2016-17. So the things that we all need to obviously we can argue over ideology, a few dollars more in education, a few dollars less. I want more, but I understand that's a debate that is central to a democracy. What I don't understand is how you can argue over 2 + 2 = 4. The budget doesn't balance. The outside rating agencies have downgraded Pennsylvania's debt 5 times in the last 4 years because the budgets haven't balanced in real terms. The independent fiscal office came in yesterday and said the budget doesn't balance. Not this year. That was the 1460, the one that they sent to me before Christmas, and the one that just on a cost to carry, just on a normal increase without any additional appropriations on the part of anybody. Next year we have what they say a $1.7 billion deficit. Well, now let me remind you, in a general fund in Pennsylvania, there are only two places you can go for savings: education and human services. And that's the train wreck that is coming down our way. It's shifting the burden for funding for education to the local level, and they'll cut back, as they did back in 2011, and shifting the burden for human services from the state to the county and local level, and they'll cut services and raise taxes. So that's what we're looking at. It's not, these issues. I am for shale tax. I am for property tax relief, and those things I intend to bring back in the 16-17 budget. But fundamentally, we have to make sure this budget balances, and that's what I don't understand, why there's even a debate over that. Again, yesterday the independent fiscal office came out and said there's a big looming train wreck, as I said there, coming our way. You went to BB&T Bank with the kind of budget that folks down the road or down the street are proposing, they'd have thrown you out of the office. They wouldn't have given you a loan. So that's where we are, and it's not an ideological thing. It's not a Democratic or Republican thing. It's not a liberal or conservative thing. It's just math.
Speaking of something that is a Democratic and Republican thing, another season that has just begun is petition gathering, or signature gathering for ballot placement for the legislative elections. And I was just wondering, given the battles that you've had with the legislature this year, are you or your campaign team actively involving yourself in candidate recruitment for legislative seats this year? And do you expect to be kind of working hard to build Democratic Party ranks in the House and Senate?
I'm looking I would do what I can, and I will do what I can to help build the ranks of reasonable, responsible legislators. Yes, I think we have a lot of them on our side. I think there's some on the Republican side. And what I think all Pennsylvanians ought to look for is people who are doing their job. I mean, the voters are our bosses. They put us in office. They hired us to do a job, and we need to do it. And I think we can help that process by finding people we can present to the voters to say we think these folks will actually do the job. So yeah, I think that's a responsible thing to do in a democracy. We need good people here. I want democracy to work.
Are you prepared to use your PAC to give chosen candidates a leg up to give them financial help?
I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I will do what I can to support good candidates.
Do you have any more five-party negotiations scheduled?
Yeah.
Budget negotiations?
Yeah. But I'm not telling you where or when.
But there are some.
They're going on right
scheduled?
now. Yeah.
Okay.
Not only scheduled, going on.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.